So where are we? We're in Egypt. In that day there shall be a highway out of Egypt to Assyria, and the Assyrian shall come into Egypt, and the Egypt into Assyria, and the Egyptians shall serve with the Assyrians. This is why the war is going on and has been in Syria for the last going on 3 years now. And today I was looking at the sending of ships by Russia and Iran and China into the area. It's all to stop Jesus. This is what it's all about. Because, of course, the Jews are very familiar with these prophecies. So it's all to stop Jesus. Continuing, in that day, so remember this is a prophecy for this day now, shall Israel be the third with Egypt and with Assyria, even a blessing in the midst of the land, whom the Lord of hosts shall bless. Christ saying, Blessed be Egypt, my people, and Assyria, the work of my hands, and Israel, mine inheritance. Now, of course, it's not talking about the Jews who call themselves Jews as Israel. It's talking about the land which is Palestine. So what it means is the Jews out and the Palestinians in. Palestine are the Holy Lands. Always will be. The world Jew domination has all Western nations supplying weapons to the Rothschild rebels in an all-out war against Syria. These righteous people under Assad, their president, he and his father belong to the Elohist, Jesus-loving Muslims. During the last week of June 2013, the people of Egypt gathered to protest. This was the largest protest in all of the world's history. 33 million people protesting against the world order and the Jews. Now, how would the Christian world react to Christ choosing Egypt, Syria, and Iran as the most righteous nations? People who have compassion for the Palestinians, people who have had a war waged against them, backed by the USA, Israel, and all of the Western Antichrist Satanist nations. Presently, Egypt is being told of the most important event since the cross, when the head of 1.2 billion Christians, Pope Benedict XVI, announced Jesus was back. Would the children of the future be surprised that the world still would not listen and realize their parents all supported Lucifer? How will the same 33 million Egyptians react? Could it bring down the Vatican? Then an anti-pope refused to believe, and then after 10 days from when he was told by Benedict XVI, kidnapped Benedict's staff and locked up the Pope in the Vatican. Would they, the children of the future, be surprised if it were revealed the entire Vatican hierarchy knew Jesus was back while Pope Benedict XVI was still the head of the Church and kept it from him, he, the Vicar of Christ? Would that be a surprise? Obviously, the conclave was a setup and totally a conspiracy, as all of Rome had been notified. The reality is no Western nation, from the Vatican to the local parish church, wants Jesus back. It is prophecy, and is why only those who become like little children can enter into paradise. So complete is the Talmud plan, it has infiltrated every facet of the Western world. Jewish writers have boasted how stupid the Western goy is, how they have been devoured so easily as a joke in the synagogues. It began in earnest in 1913. The Federal Reserve Bank of America, it sounds like it is government, but is entirely Jewish. Money was printed and loaned to the government, but had no backing. Then banks became dominated as shares were bought and sold on the stock market. Then banks were able to create $9 for every $1 deposited. This is called fractional reserve banking. The scam continued by a Jewish corporation being loaned a sum, let's say $10 million, then take the same to another Jewish bank and deposit it. Then that bank has 9 times as fractional banking drawn from the Federal Reserve. The 10 million becomes 90 million. Another scam is the birth certificate. Al Capone would insure a homeless drunk. Then his thugs would supply alcohol continually until he died. Capone then cashed in the insurance policy. The Jews went one better. Each time a child is born, the baby's parents fill out a registration form. It's taken to the Register of Birth, Deaths and Marriages. Then a birth certificate is taken to a judge, and the judge in the closed court calls out the baby's name. No reply, and he then declares the baby intestate, meaning dead without a will. The raised birth certificate is similar to maritime law. When a ship docks, its bill of lading must be presented to the Maritime Services Board for registration, as imports increase the value of a nation. The ship's captain is then issued a berthing certificate, and then the cargo leaves the water onto dry land. In the storeman birth certificate, the baby has come out of the water of the mother's womb onto dry land. The baby, now intestate, dead without a will, has the potential of paying taxes or becoming a corporation, and from that time onward, all legal documents are capital letters. Jesus Christ would be Jesus Christ, or Joseph Ratzinger became dead without a will, all capitals, as Joseph Aloysius Ratzinger. From then on, the birth certificate is traded on the stock market, and presently a birth certificate in the USA sells for $6.9 million. Throughout life, all names dealing with a child is in capital letters. Bank card, driver's license, all legal matters and government letters, etc. Finally, when one dies of invented and or perpetuated diseases such as cancer, diabetes 2, flu, measles, etc., all that maims and kills are perpetuated, no exceptions. The AIDS virus was invented by the United States Health Department under contract from the Germ Warfare Department. Today, with the advanced computer search engines, I made available the patent number, so one simply has to type that number in a search engine on the internet, and the patent office opens to the patent, and the number is 464-7773. And of course, the all capital letters, if you go into a graveyard and read the tombstones, all of the names are in all capital letters, and mostly the rest of the writing too. So, dead as a doornail is what all capital letters imply. War is then the name of the game. For example, 51,000 died in the Vietnam War. Each was worth a minimum $60 million per soldier. In addition, each was insured at birth to cover the bank's investment. So it is a win-win situation. The certificate is then raised as a bond and traded on the stock market. The value of certain age groups that are potential soldiers in some Jewish arranged war, like Iraq, Libya, Syria, or back in time you had Korea or the World War II and so on. All engineered wars with nations hyping the masses via the Jew-owned Zionist media. How the threat of the Muslim hordes, or Russia or China, or whatever is listed on the stock market agenda. Therefore, by fractional fiat currency, all major corporations have fallen into the same domination by the Jews. The Obama administrations are all Jews, and a Jew is automatically an Israeli. As for Obama, he's a skull and bonesman. This abomination is Freemason with a twist. It started in Yale University. There, a building entirely secret dominates the USA presidential nominees. 15 Yale students are tapped each year and become secret bonesmen who will dominate all major positions in the United States. On the wall of the main chamber is the word in capitals, war. These abominations date back to a common idea. During the Spanish-English conflict, Spain had been raping gold from the Mayan Aztec empires. The English licensed pirates to share in the spoils, and in this way avoided a war with Spain. To this day, all British ships returning to port fly the skull and bones flag. The pirates were protected by the English Admiralty and would dock in a neutral port and exchange the spoils. This is not a new idea. It is simply a modification to the Knights Templars. Henry Golightly was the rightful inheritor of the Scottish throne, he the son of King William I, the Lion. Alexander III had died, and he, the descendant of the same king, was childless. Then in 1290 the royals were gathered, known as the 13 Competitors, to seek the right to rule Scotland. Henry Golightly's grandson Patrick had no support and withdrew under threat by the Templars. He was descended from William I, whose grandparents were Margaret, Queen of England, and Malcolm III, King of Scotland. David, the childless son of Malcolm and Margaret, brought the breakaway order of the French Credunt Benedictine monks to Scotland, and later William had acquired silver mines and financed all of the Benedictine monasteries. King William had built Stirling Castle, and his greatest effort with the Benedictine monks was Arbroath Monastery. I visited it some weeks ago with Mrs. Marshall and found the positive link to Glastonbury and the Colburn Bible. The Colburn was an accurate record of what Jesus said and will become the doctrine of the worldwide church. The Benedictine monks had followed Jesus to Glastonbury, establishing the monastery in Glastonbury and St. Michael's Church on what is known as Glastonbury Tor, a hill 520 foot high overlooking the monastery. On May the 31st, 2013, two sources of light eliminated shadows from the area. The two light sources came from directions later discovered to have been due to the dwarf sun we had been observing for 3 years in Australia. Now had moved to the northern hemisphere, as I had predicted, since all bodies from space follow the solar system as it is moving northward at 69,000 kilometres per hour. As predicted, the Earth's axis is in a wobble, and some days later we found the Earth had tilted 51 degrees off north. This is why the temperatures and light direction had changed dramatically. Below the path up the Glastonbury Tor to St. Michael's, and note, no shadows. This was May the 31st, 2013. The new axis was in the south of England, on the east coast, 30 miles south of the Channel. No shadows. Very twilight zone-ish. Now, Glastonbury Tor and the monastery were destroyed by Henry VIII, who was threatened by the Colburn Bible. He demanded the documents. The monks refused, and in retaliation, Henry VIII had the abbot and 2 monks drawn and quartered at St. Michael's on the Tor. The lack of shadows was for the day we were there. The lack of shadows was for the day we were there. Later we returned to Glastonbury on June the 3rd, 2013, and the shadows, they were all there. Now, previously we'd flown to Edinburgh from Castel Gandolfo, purchased a car prepared by MI6. We drove from Edinburgh to Glastonbury, arriving late afternoon, no shadows. Then we drove on overnight to Folkestone, near Dover on the English Channel. While there, we were in contact with MI5 by a gent and a lady. That was funny. So to reflect for the moment, we arrived in Edinburgh, stood in line at immigration. This is at the airport. The long line slowly made their way to the officer. Each would present their passport, place their finger on a small device recording their print. Then a camera would take a photo of their eye. Like the fingerprint is unique to the individual. Finally, it was our turn, but as Ash walked forward, past the red line some 5 metres back, he called me as well. Now, this was odd, as all of us had approached one at a time, the officer dealing with one at a time. He asked us how long we'd be in the UK. I said we had arranged to buy a car, and the seller was meeting us here at the airport. Then we would visit my relative's castle, King William Stirling Castle. Then we drove to London. We'd drive to London, visit friends, and then leave through Dover to Calais, France, as we're booking in Folkestone. Then we'd drive on through France, Belgium, Holland, Germany, Poland, return via Switzerland, and on to Rome. He asked how long. I replied 2 weeks. He stamped the passports, and that was it. No eye or finger scan. He'd either been told not to, or he forgot, being so nervous. He knew who we were. Now, the odd lack of shadows confirmed to me that there were 2 light sources. We and our disciples have been studying the approach of a new solar system that has a 3,600-year orbit. We recorded it in Antarctica via the German webcam known as Nehemiah. The mystery is the type of light its sun a dwarf 94,200 miles wide, slightly larger than Jupiter at 88,800 miles wide, too small to reach nuclear fusion of its hydrogen mass. The new dwarf near that threshold, one stage before the fission state producing light that has a longer wavelength than fusion light from our sun. The dwarf light is prophecy. The light is less harsh than the sun. The Earth's atmosphere can only reach a certain level of light wave saturation. A new light source with a longer wavelength cannot be seen by the human eye. Animals and insects can. Something like insects see ultraviolet, others X-rays, and so on. Light then passing through the atmosphere from the dwarf is like a freight train, one wave pushing the next or being pulled apart. And here is an example. 16 waves are shown in this illustration, the waves pushing each other through the atmosphere. In the morning or sunset, the waves are compressed and falls within our perception, as the dwarf was in the east while we were in Glastonbury, May 31st, 2013. We saw the sunlight setting in the west. The evening grew dark, then suddenly brighter. This I have noticed for 3 years. The sun output is burning faster than it can be replenished from within, to grow dim, then every hour grow brighter, to flash, then like a candle in the wind flicker, recovering as fuel catches up. Now, as we had 2 light sources, one from the west and the eastern dwarf light compressed by the distance from the horizon in the east, the dwarf was lower in the sky earlier in the afternoon, and as the atmosphere can only sustain light waves of visible light and fading, the dwarf light waves hitting the sun waves are separated and glow, as if pushed together, and fall into the visible light. All around the world, this has been a mystery. Naturally, what we upload is removed by the Jews who dominate YouTube. Facebook or Twitter being CIA. From our hotel, we were in line with a church tower with a one-word name, Christ. The English had placed explosives in the church and detonated it, killing all attending Mass during the war, and blamed the Luftwaffe. It was not the policy of the Luftwaffe to bomb Christian churches during World War II, as the pilots were all Christian. From our window, all that remained was the tower. I noticed between the tower and our window a car park and a Methodist church. This is the Methodist church. It is opposite where Churchill, the former Prime Minister, sacrificed a church full of Christians and blamed the German Luftwaffe, Christian pilots. The roof of this Methodist church is the Old Testament altar, the altar where sacrifices of blood was ordered by Lucifer to kill a bullock and pour the blood into the trough around the altar, and was also ordered to take the blood and place it on the 4 horns. Reading Exodus 29:12, "Thou shalt take of the blood of the bullock, and put it upon the horns of the altar with thy finger, and pour all the blood beside the bottom of the altar." The location was strategic, a hidden sacrifice, until Ash booked online our accommodation in another hotel, the Grand Burston. It was here we were approached by MI5 agents. From there she arranged another hotel, as the first was smoke-filled recruiting ground for a remake of Star Wars. So she made the decision to move from the Grand Burston to another, to be given the room directly overlooking the remains, a church simply named Christ. We observed the setting sun return from the west to set eastward in the north. Now, some of you will remember this, the movement of the sun backwards. It had already set, coming across top right of the photograph there, to out of the frame, moving eastward, and then it reversed. It had already gone through the left side of the frame there, was out of the picture altogether, and then this day it reversed and moved around to come back into the middle of the frame there, where it's set between those two buildings. It was moving eastward. June the 8th. West to east setting. So the sun is setting from the west towards the east. We observe the sunrise in the east was almost horizontal to then climb and at noon be above our location. Then mid-afternoon curve northward to return westward and set between the high buildings. That should be eastward. Okay, we're going to stop here and I'll be back with more.